see?
I can see. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm just here with the one and only Eddy Deutsche,
Oi.
a good friend of mine. And how are you, Eddy?
I'm great, Todd. Thanks.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
I feel like I know you well enough now I'm just going to sort of raw dog it. I don't
Cool.
have anything prepared, so bear with us.
That's
If
good.
it's really dodgy, I'll edit it out.
Mm.
But just for the listeners, do you want to just tell people a little bit about yourself? Like, where you're from, where you work now, it doesn't have to be super detailed because I know you've gone over this a few times.
All right.
Just
yes,
for some
yes,
new
yes.
listeners, and then we'll get into other stuff.
All right, that sounds great. Okay, so I'm Eddy Deutsche. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I lived in California as a child too, and went back and forth. And I worked in California, all over San Francisco and Oakland, Los Angeles, and now I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I work at the fantastic, fabulous, world famous tattoo shop. It's called Adventure Tattoo, owned by Chad Koplanger, and the crew there is outrageous. They're so good. It's really fun.
Yeah, that shop looks amazing.
Yeah, can't wait to have you there.
I want to visit.
We want you there. We want you to visit.
All the interior looks insane. It's a lot of detail.
It's a really incredible collection of a man who's 100% dedicated to the craft and art of tattoo. So it's something to see. Yes. I love being able to say that, and it's not mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Okay, well, I suppose everybody's the big news this week would be the closure of Tattoo City.
That's true.
So I suppose we talk about that and
Sure.
how it all began, because you were actually there at ground zero when it started, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
So, how did that all come about?
The ground zero, the beginning of Tattoo City.
Yeah. Ed Hardy's Tattoo City, if anyone doesn't know.
Ed Hardy's Tattoo City, yeah, of course. San Francisco. I was there for 4 years, so I was, in the big picture, I was only there for 4 years. I was there for the first 4 years. Opening day was July 1st, 1991. I moved to San Francisco, arrived at San Francisco International Airport on July 1st, 1991, with sheets of flash under my arm that I did on June 29th and 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Right there at the last minute. And originally it was going to be, the lineup was going to be Freddie Corbin, Dann, Higgs, myself, and Freddie Negrete, which I was really excited to work with Freddy. I had a relationship with him. He was my friend. I was really excited to work with all three of these guys. They were all my friends. Freddie Corbin was already starting to be a really good friend of mine. Dann Higgs was a friend of mine for a few years at that point. The crew was solid. Ed Hardy worked in a private studio in the Tenderloin. He had like an apartment in a skyrise. It was like a studio apartment in a skyrise that he worked in.
Yep.
That's where I got my back done. And that's where I got my other tattoos, a couple other tattoos from Ed Hardy, and Freddie got his back done in that room. Dann Higgs got his back done in that room, and countless others.
And we'll go down the back piece road for
Okay,
now.
sure.
What about the days on days of getting tattooed?
Days on. Well, let's just for me, getting tattooed on my tattoo,
Back piece.
that goes outside of Tattoo City. When I moved to San Francisco, that was part of my motivation for moving to San Francisco.
Yep.
I was going to move to San Francisco anyway and get my back piece done. So my plan was to move to San Francisco and open up a tattoo shop with Freddie Corbin. That said, me and Freddie talked about it because the lease was coming up at Realistic.
Yep.
And we had talked about it a lot. But always every single time we talked about it, the number one thing that we always agreed on is if Ed wanted to open up a shop, we were going to open up a shop. We were going to do that. We were going to go work for Ed. I wanted to work for Ed my whole life. So, and Freddie already was doing that at Realistic, but, Realistic was like kind of a private studio. It wasn't really, the best environment for Freddie or Dan, I think, to
just get the basics down.
To grow. I mean, they had gotten those basics down already, but it was, just a different time, and that type of situation wasn't ideal for them, and they both knew it. So, we were going to open up a shop. We were going to call it Temple Tattoo or Temple Dude Tattoo, I think, and it goes along with this tattoo on my pinky, the on my pinky, and you'll see a few people out there in the world that have that. That was in that's how that started as well. So we were going to have that, but we always agreed if Ed wanted to open a shop, that's what we were going to do. So when Ed approached Freddie about the closure of tattoos, Ed approached Freddie about the closure of Realistic. Mm-hmm. Freddie told Ed exactly what we agreed upon, that we were going to open up a shop unless he would in fact want to open up a shop. Then we were totally prepared, and that was the ideal, was to work for Ed Hardy. 100%.
It's a pretty good, that'd be a good start.
I mean, it was my dream. It was my dream. I mean, he was already living it, but I did a guest spot at Realistic, and Ed took me to Japan. 6 months before that, I went to Japan with Ed Hardy as like a friend companion. So there was nothing, I wanted more than to work for Ed Hardy at that point, Mm-hmm. Yeah, I already experienced.
And he was like leading the pack, wasn't he? Like,
it was
at that time.
For me, it's still the same. So for me, he is still the number. He was the one.
He changed things.
He not only changed things, but his vision and his abilities were just so far from what others were doing, and honestly, they still are. So like, even though he hasn't tattooed in a long time, I think he's still he was at a point where his approach to art and tattoo and his technical abilities, just everything,
work ethic.
Work ethic, all of it was just so far beyond what normal people are capable of. That's just it's just how I see Ed Hardy. I still see him that way. Never changed. It's never been different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got a lot of respect for him, obviously, for the time that you spent with him, and
the time before I knew him, the time I spent with him, the time afterwards, for sure, a lot of respect. 100%.
Life changing.
There's the Ed Hardy is a human being too. So there's that, and I'm a human being, as well, and I have a lot of difficulties with certain things in life. So that's how it works.
So of course. We all have similar situations, I suppose, with difficulty becoming a tattooer. You find your way into this thing sometimes because of that.
For sure.
You know what I mean? For
sure.
There's a sort of a group of people that are got struggles going on or whatever.
We're all one mind. That goes with the imagery. It goes with the expression. It goes with the need to do it. Mm-hmm. It goes with all these things. We all grew up with this music and the culture and the movies and the television programs and the Bionic Man and all these things that we all have in common, that brings us to this to this quest for this certain type of imagery. It's like the soup. I talked about that last night.
The soup definitely. It's a life soup, and it comes together in a artistic, tattooy, herbal way.
Urban, graffiti, just like the punk rock, the heavy metal, all of it, it all just...
And it's all done a full circle now, where it's back, and it's all, you know, people are...
Well, it never stopped.
It never stopped, but it's become
stopped.
quite popular again.
Yeah.
In, like, I notice it with, like, say, Newtown.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
They're into the hardcore and that sort of lifestyle, and, you know, the artwork that's going on, sort of stripping it back. It's quite raw, you know what I mean? It's expressive, but also punk, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool to watch, actually, and be part of. Cool. And yeah, just in as far as Tattoo City, like, that was a street shop, and
Tattoo City was a street shop in San Francisco tourist area. It was a tourist area, Little Italy. You know, there was a lot of, you know that, I mean, that was one of the things, you know, that was trying and made it a little bit difficult to do the large scale custom work all the time in that environment, because, you know, you have like random, you know, people that are just curious. Yep. Coming in all the time, and they could like look right in and watch you work, and and you know, they would say, you know, and we had like a buffer. We had a shop helper, which you know, we had a few of them, but the last one that we hired, me and Freddy hired him. He still works at Tattoo City, so he's the longest serving tattoo counterhand that there's. I think he gets like, I think he has a pretty good deal there, but so yeah, I wonder where he's going. I wish I had a job for him. Such a great guy. But I don't. Yeah. I wish I was rich. I could. I could buy Tattoo City. That would be sick. That would have been cool.
That would be pretty cool. And it has moved from the original spot, hasn't it?
It did move from the original spot. It moved down the street. It moved off of Columbus Avenue, and yeah, I think it's a nice spot. I actually was just there. The last week before the announcement of the closure, I was there on my way here. I stopped in San Francisco for a couple of days to give myself a break from flying, so I didn't go from a 4-hour flight to a 20-hour flight. And I worked at Seventh Sun, and you know, hung out with some of my friends in San Francisco and some of my friends in Oakland. You know, anyway, I walked with the Italian guys. These guys from Italy, one of them was with me in Nashville, and he actually flew to San Francisco with me. Yep. And then I tattooed his buddy, and then we walked to North Beach from South of Market, where Luke's Seventh Son tattoo shop is a block from the shop that I had. So we walked from there to Tattoo City, which is as far across the city as you can do, basically. So, you know, it's from one end to the other, you know, and it was a good hour and a half walk, I think, or maybe an hour. I'm not sure. We were cruising, and it was closed. It was closed on like a Thursday or something. Tattoo City was closed. There was a sign on the door that said, "We're opening. You know, we're closed today. Sorry, we'll be back tomorrow." And I was like, fucking bummer.
Here today, gone tomorrow.
But I had a feeling. Anyway, and I haven't really visited Tattoo City because, you know, I haven't felt a lot of warmth from that place, and I just, you know, I always have other things to do. You know, there's always so much love in San Francisco for me that I just gravitate towards that, and I haven't really gone to Tattoo City, you know, much over the last, you know, couple decades. Me and Freddy went up there once, and they were closed. We were there at the wrong time, and they were closed, and we took a picture in front of the door, and then we took a picture in front of the old shop. That was a few years ago. I'll have to dig that picture out. And I want to make a post about Tattoo City and just, you know, put it out there. I made a gratitude list for Ed while I was here, and, you know, after the news came out, and I was like thinking, like, you know, I was just thinking about him so much. I was like, and I make gratitude lists anyway, so I just dedicated one to Ed, and it was like I just couldn't stop going, and I got up to like 79, and I was like, oh my God, like this is so much. I'm gonna stop here because he's 79 years old, and then every year from now on, I'll do it again. Like, you know what I mean? I'll just do it again, and this will be my yearly practice. You know, so that I I can remember, and I can like account for that for myself, you know. And maybe I'll share it with you guys. I don't know. I shared it with a couple of friends of mine, and I sent it to Ed. Yeah, and that's all really good to send it to Ed, you know. And hopefully he gets it, and or not, you know. Or Francesca gets it, and just, you know, gets it. You know, I never stop thinking about them, you know.
Yeah, no, it was cool. You let me read it, which I was very lucky to have. It would have been a life-changing experience at that age too. You were only young, weren't you?
Yeah, working at Tattoo City.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Freddie and Dan, you know, we were all pretty young. I don't even know. I mean, I'd only been tattooing for a few years. I mean, they were action-packed years for sure. I was all over the fucking place, working everywhere, and I've had like these fast track. Since I started professionally, it was kind of a fast track world for me because, you know, I'd been trying to start for a long time. So it was like, you know, I hit the ground, you know, running 100 miles an hour. I think the second month I tattooed, I did a military pay weekend in a military, you know, type shop by myself because my boss had like appendicitis and he couldn't be there, and he just fired everybody but me, which was amazing. Like, you can imagine the crew was there. Yeah. He fired everybody except for me. Yeah. And I hired my friend who lived across the alley from me. We lived in garage apartments, and I hired him to help me. Mm-hmm. You know, his name was Mike Stobie. And he became a tattoo artist shortly after that, and has been one ever since, working at the world famous Avalon Tattoo Shop in San Diego. He has worked there his whole career. So this, you know, he's like a full on like homeboy, San Diego homeboy, who you know, he probably lives in the same neighborhood. You know, I'm guessing. You know, I don't know, yeah. But. Great guy, and you know, he became a professional tattoo artist, extremely efficient, really did nice work. He did drawings, you know, that's why I hired him to help me, just to like, he set up people in stencils on one side. There's a small shop, it was probably as big as this kitchen, and he set the guy up in the stencil on one side, and then I would tattoo him, and then he would bandage them, and the other guy would be already set up in the other station, and I would just go over there, change my gloves, the machines would be ready, and I would just go and do that. Yeah. And it went on for like, you know, a solid 2 days.
Perfect.
Yeah, a solid 2 days. I think Mike got like a couple $1,000s, which is more money than he ever made, I think, in his life, and especially for a weekend. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember how much I made, but I bought a motorcycle at the end of that.
You bought a Harley, didn't you?
I didn't buy the Harley that time. I bought it was like a Honda, you know, but you know, it was, I bought a motorcycle, you know, it was
a good weekend.
It was a strong weekend. I'm not sure what kept me going for the 48 hours, but I'm pretty sure, you know, I wouldn't do the same thing now. You know, I wouldn't be able to do that now. So,
had some help.
I had some help. Yeah, I had some help. Mike wasn't my only help. Mike had help too. We were helped.
You're living it.
We were having.
You had to be awake, so.
It was stronger than caffeine.
Sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. And I learned how to tattoo that weekend too, honestly. Like, before it was kind of a struggle, and then after that weekend I kinda had my chops, you know. I don't even know how many tattoos I did. I mean, you gotta think, like, twice as many as I could have done without Mike, probably. Mm-hmm. You know.
Simple designs, were they?
Simple designs. I remember a bunch of Greg Irons designs, or Navy and Marines, you know. It was busy. The shops across the street, like, Inkers was the number one shop, first of all. That's what brought me to that area. And Inkers was closed because they fucking tore the block down. So there was like 4 shops on that block.
Wow.
And they tore the block down.
Wow.
So now there was just us and Masters on one side.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that block, there was a couple other shops. Mm-hmm. I don't remember who they were. Maybe Tiger Jimmy's was on it. But Tiger Jimmy's, Inkers, and a couple other ones. And Tiger Jimmy's is like the cousin of Pinky Young. Oh. So he was the busiest shop, probably.
Yep.
You know, I mean, he just had it all. You know, the Chinese, set up, the artwork, the flash everywhere that was like, ornate and the same, the mystical Chinaman, like, what I'm saying? We grow up thinking that this is a thing. So, they sold that shit, and rightfully so. They knew what they were doing, and they did a lot of work. In fact, Tiger Jimmy bought the shop that I worked in after my boss closed it. Mm-hmm. He bought the space and reopened up in the space that the shop I worked at. Which the shop I worked at originally was Painless Nell's shop from, way back in the day, and then Zeke Owens bought that shop from her, and then Ed Hardy worked there for Zeke. I think Ed might have owned that shop. It was just a little tiny shop that was connected to the arcade Funland.
Okay.
In downtown San Diego. It was super tiny, off to the side. You could get in from the arcade too. It was like it really felt like the 60s, honestly, like, even though it was the 80s, that particular place, like the homeless people of the arcade, the cat face guy worked at the arcade. He was the guy who repaired the games. Mm-hmm. And he got his tattoo from Larry Hanks, who started Aloha Tattoo, right? Which I'm wearing this shirt right now because this is my dear friend and one of my favorite spots to go to. He owns it now. But Larry Hanks did the cat face guy, and that's how I got the job. That's how I went to that studio in the first place, because on a trip before I lived in LA and I went to San Diego, I wound up in that shop, and he was tattooing the cat face guy. He was like tattooing his eyes, and Larry and his brother were there, and they were so cool. And I just, when I went back to San Diego, I went right to that shop. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get a tattoo, and he wasn't there. He had just sold the shop to Kenzie, this guy Kenzie Bolson, who in turn gave me my first job. That's my story. There you go. There's the creation of Eddy Deutsche as a tattoo artist.
Well, that was going to Tattoo City, wasn't it? On the way, was it?
That was the beginning. Yeah. So getting to Tattoo City, I followed Kenzie. I followed Kenzie to Denver, and then from Denver, I hooked up with the Peter Tattoo Crew, and I wound up going to Paul Rogers, which that story is like, I told it so many times, my favorite story, but I'd like to skip it this time because you guys could hear it somewhere else. I went in depth with it last night.
The Paul Rogers.
Yeah, and then from there I went to New York, and then from New York to Maryland to all over the fucking place. You know what I'm saying? And then wound up in Hawaii. And then, Europe. I went to Europe, all over Europe, Hawaii, and then back to New York.
What about tattooing in New York when that was all legal, and like how did that work?
I worked in a shop, so I worked in Long Island where it was legal, and at that time it was cool, and tattooing was so different then. It was like. Mm-hmm. First of all, New York was all about single needle and fine line and all that stuff. Then you had like Tony Polito in Brooklyn, who worked in like kind of the ghetto, mm-hmm. Doing this, beautiful traditional work that was like absolutely incredible. But most of the time he was just doing like names and stuff on folks that didn't really care about tattoos at all. Like they just, this is like a neighborhood thing, and he didn't really care. I can't say that. So he did, I saw fucking crazy beautiful tattoos that were like, they looked like a marker did them, or like, they looked like a crayon or something. It was, they just had this really wild, solid, bright look.
Like a sticker. Sort of?
Yeah, they were sort of like a sticker, but they looked
just like,
they had a really unique look. I mean, I seen a couple of big tattoos that he did that were just fucking awesome and wild, but they were so stylized that they weren't. I don't know. I didn't want to get tattooed. I wasn't inspired to get tattooed, but I loved looking at them. You know, I loved seeing his tattoos. You know, at that point, you know, I already knew, like, I had sleeves. You know, I had a lot of tattoos.
You definitely appreciated them.
I definitely appreciate them. I love them, and I wanted Ed Hardy's work. You know, I wanted to get tattooed by Ed Hardy, so I was kind of like already positioning myself.
Yeah. So with the Ed Hardy fascination, what was the attraction? You know, like what besides the man,
work
the
was
myth, the legend,
insane.
but just like the
man,
style.
the myth, the legend didn't mean anything to me. The work was incredible. I mean, the work was mind blowing. I mean, you know, it was like, you know, there was not tattoos that looked like that. They were so sophisticated, but they were still like so technical, and they were so crisp because they didn't have any. You know, he has a way of just stripping it down, you know, and but still making it like really, really fucking, you know, detailed. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But I saw work from Ed that he did when he was first doing it on this guy Erno Zabauti, who worked at Lyle Tuttle's. Who, you know, I spent some time at that shop, like sweeping and doing that stuff. When I was a kid, I tried to get apprenticed there, and you know, in the end, it didn't work out. I was too young, and Lyle was not willing to do that. But for a while there, you know, weeks, I don't know, days, weeks, maybe a month. I don't know how long it was. This is like in kid time, so you know what I'm saying. But I swept the floors there. I hung out there all the time. I watched Erno work. Erno was a really suave, like cool dude who, like, you know, he looked really good. He wasn't like a biker, you know, he wasn't like a rocker. He was like a, you know, he looked like a hairstylist or something, you know what I mean? Like, he had a mustache and his hair was like real nice, and he was fit, and like, you know, he had these big blue eyes, and, you know, he was really present, you know, he like really like talked to me and was, you know, I mean, I got a lot of, yeah, good, you know, he was just a cool ass guy, and he had tattoos he was getting tattooed from Ed. He had just gotten his sleeves done, and he had gotten this big Kieran on his ribs. I mean, you know, that tattoo is like, it's just, you know, it's just like a game changer, you know, like he had a buffalo on his arm with a waterfall that was so simple. It was fucking perfect. Like, I haven't seen a tattoo that awesome ever again. Like, still, and I'm seeking my own, you know, like, to do my own that like that. Yep. And I have not gotten that fucking kickback yet. So, what do you call it? It wasn't like hyper realistic or anything, but it was kind of hyper realistic.
3D-ish.
It was 3D. It was kind of hyper realistic though. That's the thing. But it was like a painting, so it was like super simple. Yeah. But it was hyper realistic. Yeah. It was like Japanese water looked realistic in a way. Like it was so simple. Yeah. And the color, the tones of the color, like, had this aqua blue. I mean, I can recall it right now, you know, and it was really incredible. I mean, I knew then, you know, and the way Erno talked about him, and, you know, I knew then when I was like 14. I knew before that when Mel the Head in Detroit talked about Ed Hardy. He showed me pictures, you know, he showed me the pictures. So I knew like, you know, as a small kid, like that's what I wanted. You know, I never got a tattoo on my back. You know, I got tons of tattoos on my arms. I never got a tattoo on my back because I always knew that, like, you know, I was going to get a bodysuit. Yep. You know what I mean? And I was going to get a bodysuit from Ed Hardy. Yep. So yeah, it wasn't like I was just going to get one. I was getting one from this person. So it was on, you know.
I've seen it. Not many people get to see it, and it's pretty amazing to look at. You know,
Thank you.
Pretty incredible.
I love my bodysuit from Ed Hardy.
It's very cool.
Thank you.
Okay, what else? We'll go to when you left.
All right. Leaving Tattoo City, you know, was a bittersweet moment. I gave Ed a year's notice. I worked there for 3 years, and I gave him my year's notice because originally I told Ed that I would only work there for 3 years, because 3 years seemed like a lifetime to me. I never worked anywhere longer than a year.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 year was the only time I did that, was one time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for Larry Romano in Long Island when he opened up a shop for me and my old partner, Alex Herman. And when he opened up that shop, I said, look, I'm only going to stay for a year. So unless I change my mind, I'm only staying for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? Like, we paid a high percentage. I mean, but that didn't matter to me. I really didn't care about that. I just cared that I was free.
Yeah.
I was not obligated for more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we built that shop up to be really amazing and super busy. I'm sure that no one would disagree with me on that. That was a really fluid time, 1990.
Well, that's like, still knows about that time.
Yeah.
Of you guys being in that shop.
Well, I'm talking about dynamic tattoo.
Oh,
Long
dynamic,
Island, Long Island.
Yeah,
Maybe it was 89. Yeah, 89. 89 in the beginning of 90. Yeah, before I moved to Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the year I lived in Minneapolis, I just worked all over. I just traveled. I pretty much worked in my apartment
mm-hmm.
and tattooed. And, I had a pretty good thing going. There was no tattoo shops in Minneapolis. There was just there was Dave Urique was there, and Don Nolan, who lived in St. Paul. He wasn't in Minneapolis. He was in St. Paul, Minnesota, just pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
But that was it,
Yep.
And I had a friendship with, and I tattooed a lot of people in Minneapolis. I mean, I did
mm-hmm.
big, huge work, and it was super good. And it was a good time for me. And I traveled. I traveled. So I would go to California, I would go to New York where I lived, but now I was working in Manhattan.
Yep.
So I'd work at my friend's apartment, and I would work, in Jersey at Steve Ferguson's Ink Spot.
Yep.
That was sick. That's where I got the call from Ed Hardy too. From Ed when he was driving home with Freddy from the convention, wherever that was. They were driving home. It was in California, somewhere other than San Francisco. And they had that conversation about what's next. And then they called me, and I was working. It was at Steve Ferguson's. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I was still working, and they called me, and they were like, they were on speakerphone, and they were like excited,
Yep.
And they were like, are you gonna come? Are you gonna come work?
And it just say from that phone call to, like, were you just like, I'm on the way to the airport, or were you just I'm gonna get my shit together, maybe, or you were just I'm coming.
I was a yes immediately, and I had a partner at the time who was living in Minneapolis. I was living in Minneapolis, but I was in Jersey working. But I had a partner, at the time, and she was going to pre-veterinary school, so she was locked in,
Mm-hmm.
So moving to San Francisco was kind of like ending that relationship. Although it didn't end, it probably should have right there, but it didn't. And then, I said yes, of course. I said yes, of course. I would never say anything but yes to Ed Hardy. It was that was an obvious, it was obvious. I mean, Freddy knew that, it was a safe bet. And then I went home and I told her, and she was totally understood. She understood. There was no way I wasn't going to take a job from Ed Hardy.
Yeah.
I had already gone on that trip to Japan too, so I was locked in more than I was before. You know what I mean? And now I was like, I'm getting my back done. Boom, I get a little discount. The whole thing.
Yeah.
I love that.
That would have been a big incentive, I suppose.
That was a small incentive, but it was an incentive.
Yeah.
To be a priority is more of an incentive than a discount. But, for me, it's kind of scary looking at $200 an hour and however many, I don't know. Yeah.
It's a big commitment for anybody, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like 1990. Big commitment.
Once you're signing up for the...
Yeah. Now, he lived in Hawaii and only worked in San Francisco 1 week every other month. So that presented a whole nother set of things, So working for Ed Hardy wasn't really like working with Ed Hardy. Yeah, it wasn't really working with Ed Hardy. Not at that time. I think later he was around more. But when I worked there, he wasn't around much. So it was like, you know, a lot of things happened when he wasn't there, you know. That's how it went.
Of course. That's that goes on for sure. On the what does it say when the what's that saying? I don't know. To do with the boss being away or whatever.
Well, you know, you got to remember we're all really young, you know, wrapped up in our little crazy world, you know. I mean, yeah, we're all really young, so that's, you know, and it was exciting, man.
Hell yeah. And you got money, and you just, like, you know, I mean, what was it? The keys to the city?
It was exciting, yeah. yeah, it was an exciting time. Yeah. I mean, I was, you know, going nonstop, you know, and I was busy right away, and I hit the ground running, you know, and now I work for Ed Hardy. It's like Ed was flowing me some customers too, so, you know, there was a lot of things he was like not interested in doing, you know, and a lot of those came to me, you know. Some went to the other guys too, of course, but, you know, a lot of the big projects, a lot of those came to me.
Yep.
And it was cool, you know, so I did them, you know, like, yeah, I was working hard.
Were you sort of doing the mechy? Is that where you sort of started playing with the mechy stuff?
I started playing with the mechy stuff in San Diego, where I first started tattooing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something I'd been drawing since I was a kid. I did like punk flyers. I had stuff like that on punk flyers back when I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that my whole life. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like, you know, the Giger, you know, thing was like a big thing for me, because I drew like these skulls with the wild back of a head thing before I saw that movie, and then I saw the movie and I was like, you know, then like the creature and all this stuff came into focus more, and then, you know, I think I got a book of Giger's art. It was just like, just completely blew my fucking mind, you know. I mean, I was like 100% in, and, you know, I still loved a lot of other things too. So, So the mix, the first bio-mech mix that I did, that I've seen or heard of, was, you know, in San Diego when I did my friend's whole leg. You know, I did his whole leg as like a dragon with mech, and it was like turning into mech. But, you know, like my ability to tattoo was much different, and you know, my drawing ability, you know, like definitely was different. Mm-hmm. It was a pretty caveman attempt at it, and you know, it happened. You know, Greg Colts was doing the mech stuff too, and he was doing it like, you know, at the same time, and he was tattooing it before me for sure, because I wasn't tattooing when he was doing it. He had a different approach to it. He had more of a tribal kind of approach, like the stencil art of Giger. He kind of like went more with that. And then he had a very elaborate sleeve done by, he had some parts of it from Ed Hardy, from Philip Liu, from a bunch of people that I'm not sure who, that was really, really sick. And he did a bunch of it himself, actually. He did a bunch himself. That was really sick. And he was like, he had the tribal back, which I don't remember who did that, but he had this like tribal back that was like Giger, you know. It was like the Deborah Harry, you know, thing, and it was on like a cover of a book or inside a book. What was it called? It's like a thick red book. It was one of Ed's friends that put it together too. Research Magazine? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Research Magazine. It's a guy's name, I can't think. Yeah, so.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And the tattoo time thing, how did that like...
Tattoo Times came out before I got a job from Ed. I worked in Long Island.
Was that like, that was the publication that everyone was looking at? Like, was that more...
Tattoo Time came out after, I mean, that was a long time ago. Tattoo Time came out in 90, I think. Pretty sure the white Tattoo Time came out in 90, Art from the Heart. And I worked in Long Island when it came out because I know that because I went to the city to pick it up at the newsstand bookstore that sold it, and it was the only one that I knew of that sold it. Mm-hmm. It was the only way I was going to get a copy. And
so it was like that big. It was like in the magazine stand.
Tattoo Time was in a single magazine stand bookstore. It was like a bookstore magazine stand in Manhattan, in like the Lower East Side. Yeah. And I would go there and check that particular bookstore because whoever ordered books from that bookstore had an interest in tattoo. Mm-hmm. So he made, he or she, made sure that they had the latest tattoo thing, which was not that much. You know what I'm saying? Like pretty rare. Books come out now like every day. I think everybody I know has like 3 books that they did. Yeah. So I mean, it's a much different thing, Mm-hmm. But it was pretty exciting. And then opening the page and seeing my work in it was a shock. I was totally surprised. Mm-hmm. So I did not know that was happening. No one asked me to be in it. No one told me I was going to be in it. It was a complete surprise. Those photos I sent to Ed over the months of corresponding with him, I believe that was before we went to Japan. Yes, that was all before we went to Japan. Yeah, just to show him, and then he would we had a correspondence. We used to write letters to each other. I mean, he would write me back. Anyway, I mean, he would write me back long letters too. They were long, and they had he'd send me pictures, and sometimes he would correct stuff or not correct, but criticize. Critique. Yeah, he would do little critiques of stuff. Or one time I sent him a drawing that I was doing, and he went over it with a tracing paper and sent it back. Real quick, but it fucking helped me a lot, man. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Reshaped.
I mean, just to see the process, you know what I mean? Just to see the process after I already, worked on it so hard, just to see his tearing something down immediately and it was so clear. It's like seeing someone's sketches or whatever is pretty amazing. I mean,
it's the process.
Enlightening for sure. If you're open to it,
that's a good eye to have on things. It's pretty much
I mean,
the top of the pile is just doing your sketch over the top. You'll take the advice. I would take the advice.
I took anything that any scrap of wisdom that I could get, I took. There's nothing that was said or shown to me that I didn't, completely turn into religiously following or yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm pretty teachable when I have that kind of, when I look at someone like that. I've had a bunch of teachers in my life, and the ones that I've put so high, I can pretty much hear whatever they say. I think.
Okay. I hear. Yeah. Well, even having you as a friend, I admire. I've definitely been gifted with some wisdom from you.
Cool.
Obviously.
Well, through me, from wherever I got it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But you're you've got the information. I'm or people of my generation, which isn't that far behind you, but it's far enough where we're not going to get the Ed Hardy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're sort of our Ed Hardy because you got the information from Ed Hardy, and then you are sharing it now. You know what I mean? And it's pretty special and important, I think, to spread the word, because that stuff was worked out by a brilliant man and passed on to another one. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I hear you. Yeah. I mean, I wish that I could say that I learned, everything that there was to learn from Ed Hardy, and also that I even had that much time of him actually imparting clear wisdom to me. A lot of the stuff, stuff I've had to decipher. You know what I mean? Because that time and that generation, they don't break things down to you. They don't tell you stuff. It's the whole concept is that you have to figure it out yourself. they might like
it's tough love.
They might show tough love, for sure. And Ed was fully like that. I mean, if I asked a direct question, it was never answered with a direct answer. Never, ever, ever. And
riddles.
Yeah, riddles. Yeah,
I like that. I like that approach too.
And I've been told, by people, that I've done the same thing, and they're glad that I did, and people that have worked for me, or people that I've worked with, and I say work for me because the hierarchy of I own the place, so I would, that's how I see it, But they were people that worked with me, everyone that worked at my place was
working with you.
Was formidable. They all did their thing.
They got it.
Yeah, I didn't hire anybody that was not.
Because you don't want to really I know for myself, I'm some shit's going down or whatever. I'm don't make me be that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the boss guy. I just want to, just let's work together. I don't want to be over there and having to do that. I would much rather just be by your side and tattooing,
Yeah, for sure. That's how it was for me.
Yeah.
And now I work for somebody else. Now there's a boss, there's a hierarchy, and I respect it fully, and love to be a part of it. You know what I mean? And I have a special place, in the whole thing because I'm, older, you know what I mean? In this game, and I put, a lot of work in. So, it's my guy always says, there's benefits to membership. I love that.
That's a good way to put it.